very sort of technologically advanced in some ways. So the thing is, I have an iPhone. I don't know if you guys can see that. Oh no! Oh, I thought my picture's up there. Okay. Anyway, they blew the budget getting me here. Anyway, so okay. So anyway, take my word for it. This is an iPhone. Take my word for it. The case that the iPhone is in, cassette. Okay, right? So that basically kind of sums me up. I got one foot looking forward and the other foot is stuck in the past. So I love my cassette. But anyway, in the old days, we used to go back and forth on cassettes, and that's how you overdub. Like, so if you put your vocal down, then you'd record it to the next cassette, and then you'd sing a vocal, right? And that would be sort of like multi-tracking. That was the idea of doing that. So the idea of creating these songs, and now all of a sudden going to this studio was like, oh my God, we're in a studio. I can't believe it. And we recorded these songs, and it was an amazing experience. And I was hooked on music at that point. And I did everything. I DJ'd, I worked at a record store and ordered records. I worked for a record pool, for clubs and stuff. You know, I did everything. I just immersed myself into everything that was music related. And one of the big things for me growing up was, and I've talked about this before, you may have seen a campaign that I was involved with called Give the Fans Credit, which is basically, or Give Fans the Credit, which is basically an idea that, you know, when I grew up, I was a liner note reader. You know, if you guys know, who knows what liner notes are? Okay, so liner notes, when you used to get albums in the old days, right, and we're talking vinyl albums, and you would take the album out, and most of the time, as you were listening to it, there would be the credits of all the people that worked on the album. So now imagine me, I'm in Minneapolis, and, you know, snowed in, probably, and I'm sitting in my house and I'm looking, and as I'm listening to this album is coming to life orally for me because I'm hearing it, but also now I'm reading. And I'm reading the studio it was recorded at, who the musicians were that played on the record. I'm hearing, I'm looking at the songwriters who wrote it, I'm looking at who produced it, who took the album, the cover of the album, who the art director was. All of that information was right there in front of us, which was so cool to me. Because what I realized at an early age was there were certain artists that I really liked, but even more so, there were certain producers and certain writers that I liked. Like, I would hear a record by a certain artist and I'd go, oh, I love that artist. And then the next album I'd hear and I'd go, I don't like him. What's the difference? And I'd look at the liner notes and I'd go, oh, you know what? They used a different producer, or they used a different studio, or something was different. You could tell. There were certain sounds of certain records. I remember there was a place called Chicago Recording, and there was an engineer named Barry Mraz. Never met this guy in my life, don't know anything about him. He had the best sounding compression that I've ever heard on a record. And he ended up doing Ohio Players and a bunch of my favorite bands, you know, growing up. So that was always a big impression to have that. Now, we live in what we kind of call the information age, right? So now when you download a song, where's the liner notes? You hear something you like and you go, man, that's good. Who wrote that? Who produced that? Who played that? Who engineered it? The credits don't exist. Now, in the information age, and when we talk about technology, it might be credits may be the only thing that exists, or that doesn't exist now, that existed back then. In every other way, we're moving forward at a great clip, right? But those don't exist. So I say that to say that the reason I'm even doing what I'm doing as a writer and a producer was because of looking at liner notes. And I think it's important that if you go to Grammy.com, there's a tab on there that will talk about give fans the credit, or giving the fans the credit. And it's all about just giving the information out that needs to be there. It's important, because the people that work behind the scenes really are important, and they really make things happen. So that's very important. So I tell that story to say, when me and Terry finally, we were in the time and we were touring and we're doing our thing. And Terry one day goes, you know, I think I want to go to LA. Who wants to come? And everybody said, man, you crazy. Why you want to go to LA? What's going on in LA? And Terry just said, they need us out there. And they're like, well, what are you talking about they need? I said, no, we're not. He said, I don't know. And I said, so Terry, I said, listen, Terry and I were good friends, and I said, Terry, what are we going to do out there? Where are we going to stay? Oh, we'll figure it out. Okay. Well, what are we going to do? We'll make some demos. What are we going to make the demos on? We don't really have any equipment. Oh, we'll figure it out. All right, cool. So I said to Terry, you know what? Okay, Terry, let's go to LA. I'm down with you. Terry said, great. Jam's coming with me. Who else wants to come? And everybody's in the band. Now, I have to just frame this by saying now, we were making $250 a week. We had 2 gold albums, touring with Prince. $250 a week, and then they were taking taxes out of that. So it was basically about $173 a week was what we were making. So we weren't doing it for the money, I can tell you that. But everybody had saved, when you're on the road, they give you per diem, right? So you can eat every day. They give you like a little, food thing, right? So everybody had saved their per diem. So what is everybody saving their per diem for? To buy a VCR. Because that was the technology. Man, you crazy. I ain't going to LA. I saved my money. I'm buying a VCR. I'm going to sit in front of a TV and watch my VCR. And VCR, so you can record programs off the television. Now, I know this sounds to your younger people, you're like going, what? But I lived through this, right? So, this is what's so fun to me, is that it's living through this stuff. So anyway, they all go get their VCR. Me and Terry latch on to a couple of friends of ours that used to live in Minneapolis that had a house. They said, we really don't have any room. We have like 1 bedroom that's probably about as big as kind of where I'm standing right here. They said, you guys can put a couple cots in there and, if you want to bunk in there. So that became where we would do our demos. And we got, now at this point in time, the technology, you could get cassettes, but they were 4-track cassettes. And we found one in the classifieds of the paper. We got that. We had a microphone. I had a little Casio keyboard that about this big that had a little drum machine built in. And then we had our best friend, a bathroom. Because we didn't have a reverb unit. We didn't know what reverb units were. But we knew if we sang in the bathroom, it's like when you sing in the shower and it sounds great. That's what the bathroom sounded like. So we knew we could go into the bathroom and do our demos. And that was our technology. That was our reverb, was the bathroom. So we put our little demo together. We sent it out. Everybody bid on it. Everybody liked different songs and stuff. And kind of our recording career at that point was on its way. And I remember the first time we walked into like a big recording studio, there was a gentleman named Leon Silvers. Now, we were a big fan of Leon Silvers. Leon Silvers there was a record company called Solar Records. Leon Silvers did Shalimar and the Whispers and a lot of the big groups at the time. He was like the guy. And he put us in the studio. He was the one that said, just go in the studio and just create. So they had what was called 24-hour lockout. Now that meant 24 hours, the studio was yours, and nobody else could come in the studio. So we thought, okay, that sounds like a plan. So now, Terry and I are in Minneapolis working on the time stuff, but we would, on the weekends, we'd fly to LA and try to do our production and our writing stuff, right? So I remember where we went to our first session. We walk in, engineer is a guy named Tavi Mote, right? Nice guy. So Tavi, what's going on, man? Yeah, great. What are we working on? Well, we got a couple song ideas we're gonna do. So we start working on our song ideas. So now it's getting late, it's getting later. And Tavi says, hey guys, what time do you think you're gonna wrap up? And we said, we looked at our watches and we were like, well, we got 24-hour lockout. We're gonna be here 24 hours. and Tavi said, no, that's not what it means. It means that nobody else can come in the studio for 24 hours. It's like, yeah, right, that's why we're here. We ain't going nowhere. And literally, we drove him crazy, because literally I would fall asleep, Terry would keep working, and Terry would fall asleep, and I keep working. That's what it was like to be in a studio. That was like the greatest, if somebody just said, at that point, man, you can just go in the studio and work. That was like the oasis for us. That was the greatest thing ever. And we made a lot of great records out of those sessions doing that, and drove engineers absolutely crazy. And the reputation got out. Who are you working with today? These guys, Jam and Lewis. You don't want to work, man. Is it 24-hour lockout? You don't want to work with these guys. You're going to be there 20. Trust me, they're different. They're from Minneapolis. They're different. Okay? They don't know what's happening. So I remember the technology then was, 24-track tape. That's what it was. Analog board and the whole thing. Really great sound. It was really about great musicianship. So then, when it came time to mix some of the stuff. Now we had a really, actually I'll fast forward a little bit because we had a really interesting studio experience. We went down to Atlanta to produce a group called the SOS Band. And we got caught in a snowstorm down there. Now there's various versions of this story, and I'm just going to do a really short one. I will say that the story is true. We did get caught in a snowstorm down there.